Hey, what's up, guys? Bajheera here. A lot of you guys seem to enjoy my Fury guides. Well, guess what? We're gonna bust out an arms guide for you too. The thing about arms is Fury has been receiving a couple nerfs, pretty much every set of PvP hotfixes and hotfixes in general. Arms has been sort of receiving some buffs, and as we begin to get our tier sets, the arms tier set really starts to pull ahead of Fury's tier set quite a bit. So, in times like this, my fellow warriors, some of you may be considering playing some arms. Before we get started with the build and stuff, basically the main comparison between arms and Fury is that arms has a more consistent mortal strike effect. Arms does some pretty big and chunky damage. It has different types of defensive utility in the form of like banner and duel for the team, in exchange for being a whole lot less durable. So arms doesn't really have a whole lot of mitigation for itself outside of maybe sitting in D stance for the 10% less damage taken, which sucks because you actually deal 20% less damage during that, and die by the sword, which is like, you know, a minute and a half cooldown, and you can die through it for sure. So it's it's a little bit squishier. You have to be sort of making plays before things hit you rather than after. So like instead of being able to get kidney shotted and then just enraged regen like you would with Fury, you're gonna have to like recognize the kidney shots coming and pre-parry and hope for the best. Things like that. So all in all, I think arms and Fury are both good. I think that arms right now, Fury still may be ahead of it a little bit just because it's a little bit more versatile and it is more powerful defensively. But I think as we gear up, and I think as the set bonuses come in, and I think even in future patches like 10.0.5, there's a chance that arms just straight up pulls ahead. So right now, you don't have to play arms, you don't have to play Fury, you can play whatever you want. But if arms is something that you're interested in playing, I got a build for you. So let's get going. First things first, this build is the build that I've been playing the most, and the one that I've been liking the most. It is sort of centered around the Keystone talent Unhinged. That's like the main thing that really changes. There are other builds that you can play, and I can go over those as well. There's like a nice little bleed build. There's a bleed build with Skull Splitter, which really makes use of the bleeds. But all in all, I think this is just pretty standard. So this is one that I'll walk you through. And we can make more bleed build focused things in the future, but let's start with this one. So in the warrior talents, the default sort of talent that you start off with is Battle Stance. So Battle Stance now is something that gives you a whole 3% chance to crit extra, which is pretty nice, and reduces the duration of movement impairing effects by 10%, which is pretty cool. So you start here, and you also pick up D-Stance, right? So D-Stance says it's 15% less damage taken, but in PvP it's 20%. And it reduces the damage that you deal by 20%. Wait a second. Yeah, so this tooltip is kind of confusing me because in PvP, let me just not look at the tooltip and tell you what it is. You take 10% less damage and deal 20% less damage. So whatever this thing says, it's lying to you. And then you get Intervene, you get Rally, you're going to need it. Take a little bit of Leech. Take Furious Blows so you can get Stormbolt. Now sometimes, one of the talents that you can mess around with is something like Concussive Blows. Or Sidearm, depending on your comp. I don't usually play Sidearm with arms, though, is the thing. But Concussive Blows can be pretty fun sometimes. So that's pretty much the end of this tree. And here in the middle, you're going to pick up War Machine, so you can take Spell Reflect, which is just basic utility for Warrior. You want that. Pick up Fear, basic utility for Warrior is great. Heroic Leap. And then I'm going to actually go back up here to show you what's going on here. You want Zerker Rage. You definitely want Impending Victory. Warrior sort of finds itself firmly planted in like the B tier right now. I think it's like probably the fourth best melee, maybe. But one of the cool things is in Dragonflight, you get access to Impending Victory, Double Time, and Stormbolt, which are things that you used to have to choose between for like a long time. But having all three of those is really nice. And so Impending Victory is the thing that's going to sort of be your every 25 seconds heal yourself for a nice little chunk of your HP. 30% sounds like a lot, but once you get that Shadow Priest Assassination Rogue training you, it don't feel like very much at all. But it's good to have. I go ahead and pick up the movement speed. I feel like Arms waddles way more than Fury. Fury has that nice like movement speed buff when enraged, and I feel like when I play Arms, I feel the lack of that. but 5% movement speed is still pretty nice. This talent right here is pretty neat. You can take Piercing Howl, which is good for just the AoE slow, helpful for hitting spears, helpful for keeping up time, helpful for healing for your team. However, Berserker Shout is a very interesting and new talent. It allows you to like get your teammates out of fears or saps in caps, which is really cool. It is only within the 12 yards though, so you're going to need to make sure that you're cuddled up with your teammates before you try to break their sap or their fear. But if you're fighting against something that's, you know, landing fears on your team, you can play Berserker Shout for that. You're giving up Piercing Howl, but might be worth it. Frothing Berserker is a talent that I don't even really think is actually that good. Mortal Strike and Cleave have a 20% chance to immediately refund 20% of the rage spent. Arms really does not struggle with rage, which is cool. If only, I mean, like, maybe if there's, like, some kind of crazy ability that we could have that would, like, allow us to spend some rage, I don't know, maybe, like, give us, like, a shield that would reduce some of the damage we took. I don't know. Yeah, can you guys think of a talent like that, or a skill like that? I think we used to have something like that. Maybe it was called, like, I don't, never mind the hurt, or something like that. I don't know. We need Ignore Pain back, dude. Dude, can you guys tell that I'm just a little bit salty? I've been playing a lot of arms. And it is a squishy. We need Ignore Pain back bad, and we need D-stance to be like 15-15. But we'll get into that anyway. The reason why you take Frothing Berserker is so you can take one of these throws, Wrecking Throw or Shattering Throw. Wrecking Throw is very helpful. Pretty much every game nowadays is going to have a Shadow Priest in it, or like a Demo Lock in it. Wrecking Throw really allows you to put a hurt on the Demo Lock's Self Shield. And I find Wrecking Throw actually extremely useful for killing Psi-Fiends, because what's going to happen is you see Psi-Fiend go down, you throw a Wrecking Throw at it, it's either going to take off that shield that the priest just put on it, or it's going to kill the thing. So I think Wrecking Throw is sort of mandatory against Shadow Priest and Lock, but it can be useful for other things too. The only thing about this is that if you do try to take out Frothing Berserker, it's going to kind of delete a lot of your talents. So you're going to need to put a talent point somewhere else. Maybe in Concussive Blows. If you're not using a throw at all, you could take the Frothing Berserker out, you could put the thing in Concussive Blows, and then go about your build. And a small tip, I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. A small tip for that situation where it takes all your talents out, is what you do is you actually take a talent point out of, like, further down in your build, so that you can do this. But I guess it doesn't really matter, right? But yeah, maybe, so what you, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyway, you take the talent point out here, you put it here, and then I think you can safely take out this talent point and then just put it back there and like move things around a little bit. Then you have 2 talent points to work with. So that's like a little trick where instead of removing this and then having to talent everything, you just take out one of the earlier points, you put it in the point that you want, and then you take the talent points out from what you were trying to take it out of anyway. But yeah, if you don't need throw, you don't need Frothing Berserker. But the throw is pretty good. I do take Pain and Gain because, once again, really any healing that you can get his arms kind of helps, with the exception of Bitter Immunity. I don't always take that. It's a long cooldown, but you can. And if you're going to play Bitter Immunity, where you get your points for that is Wild Strikes, right? So, like, if I don't need Throw, then you can do what I showed you. Take Concussive Blows, something like that, and you can put it in Bitter Immunity and Wild Strikes. But if you do need Throw, or you do want Bitter Immunity, or you do want like Concussive Blows along with Throw, then I think taking the points out of Wild Strike is kind of where that utility comes from. Just as a small heads up. But just going over the talents again, I know we're kind of like jumping all over the place, but there's a lot to talk about, and sort of stream of consciousness guides are how we do things around here. So Reinforced Plates is just armor up, which is fine. I think most damage you take these days really has nothing to do with your armor at all. But having more armor means that you're getting more strength. So we like that. You gain strength equal to 10% of your armor with 2 points in Armor to the Teeth, which is cool, but the main thing is you want to get into Avatar. Avatar gives you 20% more damage for 20 seconds, removes all roots and snares for the activation of it. It does not make you immune to roots and snares, but it can get you out of a root. However, if you're playing Blade Master's Torment, you're definitely getting out of that route, because whenever you activate Avatar, it also pops a Blade Storm for you, which is cool. You can also play Warlord's Torment, where casting Avatar or Colossus Smash casts like a 3-second Recklessness on you, so you can get like a nice little pop with Immortal Strike. It's pretty nice, but I think overall, after testing it out, I still do, in most situations, prefer Blade Master's Torment, especially when playing with Unhinged, which we'll talk about in 1 second. So just to go through a couple more of these talents, we have a Heroic Leap, we have Bounding Stride, which makes the Heroic Leap cooldown a little bit shorter, down to 30 seconds, and it also gives you a sprint after for 3 seconds, which is pretty fun. This is great for arms. It was not that great for Fury because we're not playing Raging Blow, and this talent reduces the cooldown of Overpower and Pummel for arms, but it reduces the cooldown of Pummel and Raging Blow for Fury, which once again we're not playing that. But for this, yeah, we like that. And if you'll notice, if you played Concussive Blows, your Pummel can be a 13-second cooldown, which really can freak the casters out, especially if they're watching Omnibar for your Pummel cooldown. Pretty cool. We definitely want Double Time. We definitely want Two-Handed Weapon Specialization. I do like Wild Strikes, but it's a talent where, like I said, if I don't need extra utility, I can kind of pool my points there just to do a little bit more damage. But it is a talent place where I will take points out of to put it in utility if I need it. But this is a nice little just percent haste buff. It gives you like 1% or 2% extra haste, depending on how many points you have in it. And your crit auto attacks will then increase your auto attack speed by 10 or 20%, depending on how many points you have in it, for 10 seconds, which is pretty cool. More auto attacks is more damage, a little bit more rage. We're not mad about that. Not insane, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. And then for arms, a lot, like you'll notice I've been playing a lot of Thunderous Roar for Fury. For arms, I think that you, one, benefit from the crit a lot as arms. You really like crits, like your main stat. So it also increased the critical strike damage of Execute. And I'm telling you, man, like, there are some things about arms that are frustrating, but once you start to seeing like the crit executes, the crit mortal strikes that you do as arms, you're gonna start to understand why people play this. It's sometimes, man, when you get like those big executes that just kill somebody from 30%, you're like, okay, yeah, there's something to this spec for sure. And then because you are going into the crit, you may as well buff your crit damage with Spear. Spear is a 1.5 minute cooldown. Let me remind you guys that Kidney Shot is still a 20-second cooldown. Spear is a 1.5 minute cooldown. Doesn't actually even CC them. Tethers them to the spot. Half the classes can get out of it. But anyway, you take a talent that also makes it just last a little bit longer. Makes it 6 seconds. So it tethers someone for as long as they're stunned by Kidney Shot without actually CCing them. It does a little bit of damage, and it makes them take 15% more critical strike damage in PvP. So with all that crit, spear somebody, blast them. This needs to be like a minute cooldown, man. The arms, warriors need a lot of help right now, but this needs to be not so long of a cooldown. But yeah, it's nice as arms because you do a little bit extra crit damage. And tethering somebody into like a Sweeping Strikes, Colossus Smash, Blade Storm is pretty juicy, especially with Unhinged, which we can talk about a little bit because I think that wraps up our warrior-specific talents right there. Mortal Strike, your basic, number one damage ability most of the time. Overpower is going to be, your second probably prio ability. People make fun of Fury for being like a 2-button build. This arms variation is basically a 2-button build too. Instead of Raging Blow and Bloodthirst, you're pressing, Mortal Strike and Overpower along with Execute, Hamstring, and on your offensive cooldown. So I would say this is a relatively basic, straightforward build for arms, but it's a fun one. Let's go down the left side first. So we have Martial Prowess, where Overpower increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike or Cleave by 30%. That's like 15% PvP, but still, it's not the kind of thing where you need to focus on stacking Overpowers most of the time. It's just, you just go through your rotation. Overpower sort of passively buffs your next Mortal Strikes. You can get some big Mortal Strikes, though. It's pretty fun. This just increases the damage of Overpower, kind of just a travel talent, but we're not mad about it. Tactician, this is where there's a small percent chance per rage spent on abilities to reset the remaining cooldown on Overpower, which is cool. Just keep doing keep stacking up your Mortal Strike damage. This is really fun, though. Mortal Strike and Cleave, but we don't really play Cleave for PvP, have a chance to instantly reset their own cooldowns. So there's going to be times where you press Mortal Strike, and it just lights up again. You press Mortal Strike, it just lights up again. So you're just like bang, bang, bang with big Mortal Strike, especially when you have cooldowns up, that can get pretty nasty, which is cool. Dreadnought. So Overpower now has 2 charges and causes a little seismic wave, which deals AoE damage. The Only thing that's annoying about this is that that'll break CC, like if you're playing with like a mage, something like that. But in general, the cleave is pretty good, so we like that talent. Depth experience gives you a little bit extra mastery, which is always nice to have just more stats. But it also increases tactician's chance to activate. So, you know, once again, spending rage, more overpowers, more dam, more smooth rotation. But these two talents all together, or these three talents, I suppose, all together, make it so that you really don't have to press a whole lot other than Mortal Strike and Overpower for your normal rotation, especially with Battle Lord. So Overpower deals increased damage, has a 25% chance to reset the cooldown on Mortal Strike, and reduces their rage cost by 10. So once you get in rhythm with this build, I mean, it's like lots of Mortal Strikes, lots of Overpowers, and you don't really have to do, you know, anything crazy with like your slams and stuff like that. Like slam is kind of just like a potato ability anyway. But you can use to kill totems and stuff, and maybe sometimes there'll be like a couple globals of downtime with your rotation, but when executes are proccing and stuff, you should be good. So speaking of execute procs, let's go down the right side. So improved execute no longer has a cooldown, and if your foe survives, 10% of the rage is refunded, which is nice. Then we have sudden death, which gives you those execute procs and deals damage as if you spent 40 rage. So sometimes you're going to execute somebody, which puts them into execute range, execute them again, bang, bang, they're just toast, right? It's pretty nice to have sudden death to fill out your rotation and deal big damage. And I'm talking about these crits, right? So we saw there is crit damage scaling on execute from Cruel Strikes. There's crit damage scaling from Elysian Might on your spear when you stand in it. And now we have Impale, which is the damaging critical strikes of your abilities deal an additional 10% damage. So crit is nerfed in PvP, but Arms has access to talents that buff its crit damage. So you're kind of like taking that away a little bit with Arms, and that's why the Arms crits are like so insane. We like Sweeping Strikes. This just gives you 15 seconds of your next single target damaging abilities, hitting one additional target for 75% damage. The damage fall off isn't that big of a deal. This is useful for if you play Rend for spreading Rend around, but you can also play single target Colossus Smash, which we'll talk about in a second. And Colossus Smash 2 targets. Like, so if there's like only 2 targets, they don't have any pets, you're fighting like a melee cleave, and you can consistently, you know, sweeping strikes to like a warrior and a ret. Like, that's pretty cool. Nice to have that. Massacre. So not only does this turn your execute into the condemn animation, some people are wondering why condemn is on their character. It's because of massacre talent, but it also allows you to execute targets that are below 35% health, which is cool. Improved Mortal Strike, 5% damage on our main damaging ability. Sure, it gives us some travel down to here. Critical Thinking, once again, more critical strike increase. So 2% extra crit chance, and execute immediately refunds 10% of the rage spent. So you got this one refunding rage and this one refunding rage, which leads to some like pretty gnarly like Arms execute chains, right? Like that's one of the fun things about Arms, especially compared to Fury, is where Fury does have execute on a little bit of a cooldown. Arms can just bang, bang, just slam executes into a target, try to finish them off. And speaking of crit damage, Mortal Strike and Execute critical damage is increased by 10%, right? So we already have Execute getting buffed by 10% crit damage here. We have the crit damage from Impale, and we have crit damage here as well. So 30% extra crit damage on Execute. You can start to see why we're stacking crit, right? And you have the Elysian Might, 15% extra crit damage. So it can be a lot. Let's also not forget that Execute has a 5% increased critical hit chance, which is very nice, very nice. So this is, you know, some big heavy crits. It's a fun build. There's some interesting stuff that you can do over here. We haven't really even talked about Unhinged yet, but we'll come back to it. So in your defensive side of things, Die by the Sword, it increases your parry chance by 100%. So it's nice against things that you really only are just like melee attacking you, but it's like not really like insane against casters, but you can't have activated a stun. But whatever. That's your cooldown, 1.5 minute cooldown. In terms of your sustain, you do have 85% of the damage dealt by deep wounds is healing you, which unfortunately ends up not being that much. Even if like you go into like a really heavy like mastery and bleed build kind of thing, I'm probably gonna end up trying my alt warrior, because I'm playing him with high mastery Fury, and I can just do high mastery Arms and just see how it feels. But yeah, it's something, but it ain't much. We still need Ignore Pain, just straight up. This is kind of interesting. Whenever you parry, you heal yourself for 10% of your maximum health, once per second at most. This is kind of nice when you're parrying into all these, like, 16,000 pets in the arena classes, like DKs and BM Hunters and Demo Locks. You don't see as many BM Hunters as you do in Holy DKs and Demo Locks, but whatever. You do see a lot of Demo Locks and DKs, so, you know, you can intervene, parry your buddy. When you're both low health, you get a little bit of healing from there. Your healer can focus on your bud. Or you can just parry the entire demonic legion that's chasing you around the pillar while the Demo Lock is 80 yards away, summoning pets in the starting room. So that's always nice to have. So then you have Colossus Smash. This is like your main offensive cooldown, right? Like, not your biggest offensive cooldown in terms of like Avatar's longer CD, but this is kind of the thing that's going to be like, all right, here's the time to deal damage. Does a little bit of damage and increases the physical damage that you deal, or just damage, it says, you deal to them by 30% for 10 seconds. So this is your bread and butter. You'd be Colossus smashing a target and trying to slay him. My probably favorite thing, my single favorite thing about ARMS, this expansion, is that we have anger management just built right into our spec. So you guys know for a long time, every time you press Warbreaker, somebody's weak aura is going off and they disarm you, right? Now they can't disarm every single Warbreaker on script because you are going to likely be reducing the cooldown just enough that you can, like, probably get a couple seconds of your Warbreaker in. They're going to have to disarm like every other one, which is pretty cool. It also works on Bladestorm, which is very nice because Bladestorm is fun to press and it does actually pretty good damage for us with Unhinged. So I love anger management. You really, unfortunately, are not going to be using Test of Might. When Warbreaker expires, your strength is increased by 1% for every 10 rage you spent during Warbreaker. I don't think this hasn't been good in PvP before, and I don't think it's good now. But you know what? Maybe I ought to try it sometime, because you never know. I know that I do like In for the Kill, though. That Warbreaker gives you haste, and then 20% haste if the target's low health. Maybe I should try this sometime. I'm talking smack on it, but I don't know. It looks kind of juicy, if you have uptime at least. But regardless, In for the Kill is what I usually take, and then these talents right here. Before it was like you chose Warbreaker, or you chose not Warbreaker just to avoid cleaving, but now it's like, yeah, you can choose Warbreaker, which gives you the AoE effect, or you can choose Blunt Instruments for the single target Colossus Smash that does increased damage and lasts a little longer. So once again, like, Warbreaker is great for just like the AoE. Make sure you have C Smash on everything, but if you can reliably get, or you're only going to be using Colossus Smash on one target, or you can reliably sweep it to 2 targets, Blunt Instruments is probably a better call. So you can kind of use your best judgment on that. Valor and Victory, it increases your versatility by 2%, which is nice, and reduces the cooldown to die by the sword by 15 per seconds per talent point. However, in 10.0.5, potentially, this talent will only maybe cost 1 talent point for 30 seconds of reduction. I would love to put 2 talent points in it and get a whole minute of CD reduction, which is usually 2 minutes, right? So, but it's a minute and a half because we put 2 points in it. Would be sweet if it was 1 minute. We'll see. Let's not get too crazy. But yeah, that's a 2-pointer right there. Then you go into Bladestorm, which we love, Bladestorm. Fury doesn't have it anymore, so it's good to have it back as arms. It lets you, you know, immune CC, you know, saving your Bladestorms for when you think a rogue's about to kidney shot you. Bladestorming that, Bladestorming disarms. Just blades just becoming unpeelable during, like, just the Omega Chaos of Shadow Priest, AoE Bonanza, and 38 million Demo Lock pets throwing their axes at you, you know. Double axe toss and Immortal Coil, you can avoid that BS with your BS. Bladestorm. And then all the way down here, we would talk a lot about Unhinged. If you guys remember this, it's from the Shadowlands Legendary. While Bladestorm is active, you automatically cast a total of 2 Mortal Strikes at random nearby enemies. So, obviously, when you have the entire Demonic Legion chasing you down, or every single thing that a DK has ever killed, he resurrected and is throwing at you now, it's not great into that situation, right? Because your Mortal Strikes can just as easily cleave a little imp as the target that you actually want to hit. So against pet classes, Unhinged is not as great, but against classes that don't have pets, or when you can isolate somebody, Unhinged popping 2 Mortal Strikes into somebody is pretty big burst. So we do love Unhinged. You just got to recognize when the situation calls for it. Like, the ideal situation for Unhinged is you got somebody in a spear with Warbreaker, you sweeping strikes, and then Bladestorm, right? Because the little Mortal Strikes that pop off, they're going to sweeping strikes to each other. So The targets that are stuck in that situation are going to be getting hit with like 4 total mortal strikes, 2 of which are 75% less damage, but still, that's a big booty damage right there. But in the situation where you are fighting some kind of like face roll pet class, you just go ahead and maybe pop your point to Executioner's Precision. If you're feeling crazy, you can throw it in Fatality, maybe for like 2s. Fatality is like giga nerfed in PvP, and I don't think it stacks that high, and sometimes stacks fall off. It's pretty troll. So you may just more reliably want to go Executioner's Precision, which gives you 17% more damage from your next mortal strike, stack up 2 times in PvP. Like, there's so much stuff for arms that's like nerfed by half in PvP, but yeah, your damage is pretty spiky as arms, so having like 38 modifiers for every attack is kind of sketchy for PvP, I understand. So it's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Take away half of the damage modifiers that we have in our talent tree, that's fine. Just don't take away half of our class when it comes to defensives. Like, Arms Warrior is a sort of an offensive kind of threat, but I mean, just paper thin, so we just need to have our defenses shored up, and then Arms is going to be nasty. So in terms of PvP talents, you pretty much always take Sharpen. This is what makes Arms really shine, I think, still. Maybe not, I mean, it's not as good now that Assassination Rogues can just do whatever we do better, but Sharpened Blade does give you that 50% healing reduction for 6 seconds on a 25-second cooldown. That's a lot of pressure, not to mention buffing your Mortal Strike damage. That's a lot of pressure. That's some scary stuff. I love Storm of Destruction. This isn't an every game kind of thing, but once again, it reduces the cooldown of Blade Storm by 33% and makes Blade Storm apply mortal wounds to everything. Like, that's so fun, especially with anger management, especially with Unhinged. Like, more uses of Blade Storm, and, you know, Blade Master Storm doesn't really affect that much, but it's still cool, right? It's just so nice to just Blade Storm a ton. I love that talent. And then Warbringer is just basic, just big bang damage on your charge. And now that we have double time, it's even nicer. So, a lot of times you're gonna be playing things like Banner when there's like a heavy CC or heavy setup comps. You're gonna play Banner when like a lot of your team is gonna be CC'd at the same time. Or when there's like predictable CC chains, Banner's great, like into Rogues, like Rogue Mage, or into like Hunters. That's always nice. A lot of times I'm playing Disarm for anything that's gonna be swinging a big weapon at us, or anything that benefits from disarms, like Rogues. You can disarm Rogue before Kidney or after Kidney. Peel for your teammates. Disarming Warrior cooldowns, disarming DK cooldowns, always good. I don't play a lot of Duel, but you can. It reduces the damage that your teammates take if the person that you're dueling is not hitting you, so they just deal less damage to everything that's not you. Demolition is great when we're talking about shattering like lock shields. You play Demolition and Wrecking Throw. Very nice, very nice. But those are like kind of the wiggle talents, and a lot of times I'll be changing Warbringer for some of that utility, and then if we really need utility more than anything else, then I will probably be changing Storm of Destruction. Like, sometimes you'll play like Disarm, like Banner against like Rogue Mage, something like that. I don't play a lot of Rebound. I don't play a lot of Master Commander. I don't play a lot of Shadow of the Colossus, but it is what it is. That's funny. I was showing the Impale tooltip. I was like, whoa, that's not what that does. I like it though. But yeah, we don't want those. We want all this stuff. But looks pretty good. Now, those are the talents. This is the main build that I play. This is the main build that I like. There's some wiggle room in there with the utility and Wild Strikes over here. There's some wiggle room with going into Unhinged or Executioner's Precision right there. Most excellent. Now for Arms stats, you mostly want crit verse. So we talked about how much extra crit Arms gets in terms of crit damage, and once again, you're gonna want to stack crit on your gear for that reason. So I have a couple pieces that are like haste verse, which is okay. The stat prio is verse is on everything, right? So you want verse, then you want crit, then you want haste, and then you want mastery, I believe is what we're going on with Arms. You want about 10% haste with Arms. So this is going to go up when we go to PvP, but I got the mastery weapon, so I have a little bit more mastery than I probably want, but that's kind of where we're at with that. I'm gemming for verse. We're enchanting with all the juicy enchants, like sustained strength on the chest. I'm enchanting for movement speed on the cloak and the bracer. I think Sophic Devotion is your best weapon enchant for Arms. Just more strength is good. You do have a little bit of like AoE damage. You do have a little bit of like bleed damage, and the Sophic is going to help with that. I'm enchanting verse on my rings. Once again, movement speed on the boots. And those are the stats we're looking at. In terms of actual rotation, it changes a little bit depending on what kind of avatar you play. But with avatar that's proccing a Blade Storm, it's actually a little bit different. You're not popping avatar first. You're kind of like charging in, Maybe land on your spear. War breaking, and then you can avatar. Like, the thing is, avatar is off global. So you can press avatar really fast after you Warbreaker, which protects your cooldowns both from disarm and just any really kind of CC at all. With the crit version, you probably can pop avatar first, and then your Colossus Smash is going to benefit from avatar. But then there's the basics, boys. That's arms. It's pretty fun. I'd encourage you to give it a try. We've been doing okay. Found ourselves doing some shuff the other night. Got some work done in there. I'm going to continue to play arms. Going to continue to test it out. Before I go, though, I guess I do want to mention one thing about arms. I think I alluded to it, that the upside for arms is on its way. 10.0.5 could be a really nice patch for arms from what it looks like so far. But if you can get your hands on the tier set for arms, it's weird because I got this big juicy tier set from my vault, and then I sort of randomly got these from just doing raids with Jenny with normal. But Mortal Strike and cleave damage and chance to critically strike increase by 10% is kind of nuts. And then you look down at the 4 set where Mortal Strike and Execute critical strikes increase your damage and crit chance by 5% for 6 seconds. That's crazy. Arms is like a big banger damage class. Once we get our set bonus, it's going to be even gnarlier. Definitely encourage you guys to give it a try. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys give it a big thumbs up. Stay tuned for plenty more gameplay and guides from me right here. Enable notifications. Definitely come tune in on Twitch, twitch.tv/Bajheera. We're live every day. Posting a ton of fun videos on like TikTok and stuff as well. So scour the description. Check out those links. Check out those vids. Check out those channels. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.